David Harris was a 38-year-old security guard living in the bustling city of Denver, Colorado. With his well-maintained uniform and stern demeanor, David was a familiar figure around the city's high-rise buildings. His days were filled with routine, checking security cameras, patrolling corridors, and ensuring that everything ran smoothly. By night, David returned to his modest apartment, where he lived a simple life marked by humility and an unshakable commitment to helping others. His apartment was small but cozy, nestled in a neighborhood that thrived on community spirit. Despite its size, David took pride in keeping it tidy, a reflection of his disciplined and orderly nature. His apartment was a stark contrast to the grand offices and luxurious buildings he secured during his shifts. Yet, it was his haven, a place where he could unwind and prepare for another day of vigilance. One chilly autumn evening, as David was finishing his shift, he decided to take a different route home. The city's lights flickered like stars against the encroaching darkness, and the streets were alive with the usual hustle and bustle. David's route took him through a less-traveled street, where the sounds of the city seemed a little more distant, and the shadows a bit more pronounced. As he walked, he noticed a young woman standing on the sidewalk, her expression one of visible distress. Emily Parker, as David would later learn, was in her early 30s, with tousled brown hair and a look of sheer panic in her eyes. She was being harassed by a group of street criminals who were aggressively trying to snatch her phone and wallet. David's instincts kicked in immediately. Without a moment's hesitation, he stepped forward. His imposing figure and the authoritative way he moved immediately drew the attention of the criminals. "Hey!" David's voice was firm and commanding, cutting through the night air. "Leave her alone." The men, taken aback by David's sudden appearance and commanding presence, hesitated. David took this opportunity to position himself between Emily and the attackers. The criminals, realizing they were no match for David's determined stance, muttered curses under their breath and retreated into the shadows, disappearing into the darkened alleyways. Emily's shoulders slumped in relief as she looked up at David. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know what to do. They were going to take everything." David nodded, a modest smile playing on his lips. "Just doing what's right," he said, brushing off her gratitude. "You should head home and stay safe." Emily fumbled with her bag, still visibly shaken but trying to gather her composure. "I can't thank you enough," she said earnestly. "I don't know how I would have managed without you." David offered a reassuring nod, then turned to continue on his way. The encounter, though brief, left him with a sense of quiet satisfaction. He never expected that this simple act of kindness would alter the course of his life. As David walked away, he could hear Emily's footsteps receding behind him, her distress slowly fading into the night. He returned to his apartment, his thoughts already shifting back to his routine life. Little did he know, this incident would soon cast him into a whirlwind of events that would challenge his values and reshape his understanding of generosity and integrity. The following morning, David's usual routine was interrupted by an unsettling sight. As he left his apartment, he noticed a sleek black luxury sedan parked outside. At first, he dismissed it as a coincidence. Denver was a large city, after all, and it wasn't uncommon for people to park in unfamiliar places. But as the day wore on, the car seemed to follow him. It was parked outside the community center where he worked, and again when he stopped by a local cafe for his morning coffee. A sense of unease settled over David. He was used to the usual city distractions and disturbances, but something about this black sedan felt different, foreboding even. His intuition told him that the car and its occupants were connected to last night's events, though he couldn't quite figure out how. The day passed slowly, David's focus interrupted by the nagging presence of the sedan. As he returned home in the evening, the car was still there, its dark windows reflecting the streetlights. Just as he was about to approach his apartment, two well-dressed men emerged from the car. They were impeccably dressed in suits that hinted at wealth and influence. "Mr. Harris?" one of the men called out, his tone smooth and authoritative. "May we have a word?" David paused, his instincts on high alert. "Yes." The man introduced himself as Charles Whitman and his companion as Lucas. "We represent the Parker family," Charles began, his voice laced with an air of formality. "You may not know, but Emily Parker is the daughter of William Parker, a prominent businessman." David's eyes narrowed. "I don't understand. What's this about?" Charles continued, "Emily told us about your act of bravery last night. The Parker family values selflessness and integrity, and they wish to reward you. They want to offer you a significant reward. Money, a new house, or anything you might desire." David was taken aback. The offer was tempting, but his wariness grew. "I appreciate the gesture, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this." Lucas, sensing David's hesitation, stepped in. "We understand your concerns. There's a lot to process, but the Parker family's intentions are genuine. Emily's safety is paramount, and they're grateful for your protection." David's mind raced. The unexpected attention and the lavish offer felt overwhelming. He thanked Charles and Lucas for their time, his mind already turning over the implications of their visit. As he watched the luxury sedan drive away, David couldn't shake the feeling that something more complicated was at play. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test his values and integrity in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The following morning, David Harris woke up to a crisp Denver sunrise. His apartment was filled with the soft, golden light filtering through the window blinds. Yet, despite the beauty of the day, David's mind was clouded with the events from the previous night. The luxury black sedan and the mysterious offer from Charles Whitman and Lucas were all he could think about. David's usual routine was interrupted by a strange sense of unease. He dressed quickly and prepared for work, his mind racing with questions. The car had been parked outside his apartment again, its presence persistent and unnerving. As he made his way to the community center where he worked, he cast occasional glances over his shoulder, half expecting the black sedan to appear once more. The day at the community center was a blur. David's duties included monitoring the security cameras, checking the building's perimeters, and assisting with the center's daily operations. Yet his focus was fractured. He found himself distracted by the thought of the offer from the Parker family. He couldn't help but wonder about the possible motives behind such a generous reward. Around midday, David took a break and decided to grab a quick bite at a nearby cafe. He ordered his usual black coffee and a bagel, and found a quiet corner table. The cafe was a familiar and comforting place, where the hum of conversation and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee usually provided a sense of normalcy. However, today, even here, David felt a sense of foreboding. Just as he was about to take a sip of his coffee, the door chimed, and in walked Emily Parker. She looked as if she had stepped out of a high-fashion magazine, dressed impeccably in a designer outfit that contrasted sharply with the ordinary surroundings. David's heart skipped a beat. The encounter from the previous night had left a mark, and seeing Emily again stirred a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Emily spotted David and walked over to his table. "May I join you?" she asked, her voice calm but carrying a hint of unease. David gestured to the seat across from him. "Of course." As Emily took her seat, David studied her face. She seemed to be grappling with her own thoughts, her normally composed demeanor giving way to an undercurrent of anxiety. "I wanted to thank you again," Emily began, her tone sincere. "I don't think I've properly expressed my gratitude. What you did last night was incredible." David nodded, acknowledging her thanks. "It was the right thing to do. But I'm curious. Why did the Parker family send those men to see me?" Emily sighed, her gaze dropping to her coffee cup. "I'm afraid there's more to the story. My father, William Parker, is a wealthy businessman with many enemies. The people who were after me last night were not ordinary criminals. They were trying to use me to get to my father, leveraging his wealth and influence for their own gain." David's eyebrows furrowed in concern. "So, what does this have to do with the offer from the Parker family?" Emily looked up, her eyes meeting David's with a mixture of concern and urgency. "My father's intentions are sincere, but accepting their reward might draw you into a dangerous world. The power and influence that come with the Parker name attract many hidden motives and conflicts. I'm worried that getting involved could put you at risk. David absorbed her words, his mind racing. The generous offer from the Parker family suddenly seemed less like a blessing and more like a potential trap. I appreciate your honesty, David said slowly. But why come to me directly? Emily's expression softened. Because my father and I both believe in the values you've shown. We don't want to reward you in a way that could compromise your safety or integrity. We want you to understand the full picture before making any decisions. David's thoughts were a whirlwind. The tension of the previous night was now compounded by Emily's warning. He realized that the offer was not just a simple transaction, but a potential doorway to complications he hadn't anticipated. As Emily stood to leave, she placed a hand on David's arm. Please think carefully about this. It's not just about what you want or need. It's about the potential consequences of accepting what's offered. David nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Thank you for coming by and for being honest with me. Emily gave him a small, appreciative smile before heading out of the cafe. David watched her go, feeling more conflicted than ever. The encounter had given him a clearer sense of the stakes involved, but had also deepened his uncertainty about how to proceed. The rest of the day dragged on, the weight of the decision looming over him. David returned to his apartment that evening, only to find the black sedan parked outside once more. The sight of it stirred a mix of frustration and unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that his life was on the verge of a significant change. One that could impact not only his future but also the safety and integrity of those around him. As he settled into his evening routine, David knew that he needed to make a decision, and he needed to make it soon. The choice he faced wasn't just about accepting a reward. It was about navigating a complex web of power and influence that he had only begun to understand. The stakes were high, and David was acutely aware that whatever path he chose, it would shape not only his own future, but also the community he had always been committed to protecting. The decision weighed heavily on David Harris as he wrestled with the implications of the Parker family's offer. It was a cold, overcast day in Denver when David, feeling the pressure of the looming choice, sought counsel from those he trusted most. He knew that their perspectives might help him navigate the complexity of the situation. David first met with Tom Mitchell, his lifelong friend and a man of practical wisdom. They convened in Tom's modest living room, surrounded by the comforting chaos of a home lived in. Tom was a burly man with a booming voice and an easy laugh, qualities that made him a reliable friend. David took a seat on the worn-out couch, his expression serious. "Tom, I need your advice," David began, rubbing his temples. "The Parker family made me an offer after I helped Emily Parker. They want to reward me for protecting her, but I'm worried there's more to it." Tom leaned back, his brows furrowing as he considered David's words. "Man, that's a big deal. They're offering you a lot. A new house, money, a better job. It's tempting, right? But I hear you. There's got to be strings attached. Still, don't you think it's worth at least thinking it over?" David sighed. "It's not just about the offer itself. Emily hinted that getting involved with them might draw me into dangerous situations, especially with the enemies her father has." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Sounds like you're dealing with more than just a generous offer. If it's this risky, maybe you should take the reward but keep your distance from the power plays." David nodded thoughtfully, appreciating Tom's perspective but feeling that the situation was more complicated. "Thanks, Tom. I needed to hear your take on this." Next, David visited his sister, Rachel, who was known for her practical, no-nonsense approach to life. Rachel's apartment was neat and orderly, reflecting her methodical nature. As David sat down at her kitchen table, he could see the concern in her eyes. "So, what's this about you being offered a big reward by the Parkers?" Rachel asked, pouring them both a cup of tea. David recounted the situation, including Emily's warning. Rachel listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration. "David, this sounds like a tricky situation," she said finally. "I get that you're a good person, but you have to think about the consequences. If this reward brings trouble, is it really worth it? You've built a good life here. Don't let ambition or fear cloud your judgment." David nodded, appreciating Rachel's cautious approach. I hear you. I need to be careful, but I also want to do right by the community. Finally, David sought the counsel of his Uncle George, a man of great wisdom and life experience. Uncle George's home was filled with books and old photographs, a testament to a life well lived. As they sat together in the cozy living room, David shared his concerns. Uncle George, I'm caught in a dilemma, David said, his voice heavy. The Parkers want to reward me for saving Emily, but there's a lot of risk involved. Emily's warned me about the dangers of getting too involved. Uncle George's face grew thoughtful. David, you've always been a man of integrity. Remember, it's not just about the reward but about staying true to yourself. If you think there's a risk, you need to weigh that carefully. Sometimes, the most significant rewards come not from what you gain but from what you give up for the sake of your values. David took in his uncle's advice, feeling the weight of the decision settle more firmly upon him. So, you think I should be cautious? Absolutely, Uncle George replied. Make sure you're not trading one set of problems for another. You can use this opportunity to make a difference, but do it on your terms. Armed with the insights from his friends and family, David returned home to mull over his options. The luxury black sedan was still parked outside his apartment, a constant reminder of the choice he faced. He knew that whatever path he chose, it would have repercussions not just for him but for the community he had always been committed to protecting. As night fell over Denver, David sat by his window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. He knew that his next steps would determine not only his future but also the future of many others. The stakes were high, and he needed to make a decision that aligned with his values, even in the face of great temptation. The road ahead was unclear, but David was determined to face it with the integrity and selflessness that had always guided him. As he prepared for the decision that lay before him, David felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to confront the challenges and opportunities that would come with it. David Harris sat at his kitchen table, the weight of his decision resting heavily on his shoulders. He had spent the previous days reflecting on the advice from his friends and family, carefully weighing his options. The luxury black sedan that had once been a symbol of the Parker family's influence was now a reminder of his impending choice. He had come to a decision. David would not accept the reward for personal gain. Instead, he would use the offer to benefit his community, staying true to the values that had guided him throughout his life. The following morning, David met with Charles Whitman and Lucas at a neutral location, a quiet cafe away from the public eye. David arrived with a clear purpose, his demeanor calm but resolute. The two men, well-dressed and professional, greeted him with the same businesslike efficiency as before. Mr. Harris, Charles began, I assume you've had time to consider our offer. Are you ready to discuss the specifics? David took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Yes, I've thought about it a lot. I appreciate the Parkers' generosity, but I'm not interested in personal rewards. Instead, I'd like to propose that the reward be used to help the community. Charles raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in his expression. Help the community? How so? David continued, his voice steady. I want to use the funds to build a community center in one of the struggling parts of Denver. Additionally, I'd like to establish a scholarship fund for disadvantaged students. This is where the reward can make a real difference, by creating opportunities and support for those who need it most. Lucas glanced at Charles, who nodded slowly, absorbing David's proposal. That's a significant request, Charles said finally. But given the circumstances, I believe the Parkers will be open to it. I'll need to discuss this with them, but I can't see why they wouldn't support such a noble cause. David nodded appreciatively. Thank you. I believe this is the best way to honor the spirit of the reward while staying true to my values. Over the next several months, David worked tirelessly to oversee the development of the community center. The Parker family provided the necessary funds, and David collaborated with local leaders and organizations to ensure the project met the community's needs. The center began to take shape, a place where people could access education, job training, and a safe environment for their families. The opening day of the community center was a moment of great pride and excitement. The once neglected building had been transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Families gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony, and David, standing beside Charles and Lucas, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The community center represented more than just a physical space. It embodied the spirit of selflessness and integrity that David had always believed in. As the months passed, the center became a cornerstone of the neighborhood, offering programs and support to countless individuals. The scholarship fund also began to provide opportunities for young students who otherwise might not have had the chance to further their education. David's life had changed significantly since that fateful night when he helped Emily Parker. He had gained influence and respect, but he remained grounded and focused on his original mission. His decision to use the reward for the greater good had not only transformed his own life but had also uplifted an entire community. David's story spread through Denver, becoming a testament to the power of kindness and integrity. People spoke of his actions with admiration, not just for what he had done but for how he had done it, with unwavering commitment to his principles. In the end, David Harris's journey was a reminder of the transformative power of selfless acts. His decision to prioritize the welfare of others over personal gain highlighted the impact that staying true to one's values can have, not only on one's own life but also on the lives of many. As David looked out over the bustling city of Denver, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The community center, the scholarship fund, and the lives touched by his actions were a testament to the ripple effect of a single act of kindness. His journey was a powerful example that true change comes not from wealth or influence but from compassion and staying true to one's principles.